Jess is learning fire magic from her teacher, Miss Wise. She is nervous to use dangerous magic for the first time. Miss Wise teaches her that to create fire, you need something to burn, and decides to have Jess create something combustible. While experimenting in the laboratory, Jess hears a thud outside and finds the king of Mestria, Evisama, injured and cursed by an unknown mage with murderous intentions. A surreptitious sorcerer is on the loose. The protagonist became a pig in the world of Mestria and embarked on an adventure with a girl named Jess. Upon returning to Japan, the protagonist met other otakus who also experienced the same thing. They developed a plan to return to Mestria, using the protagonist's previous experience as a magic trace. Hirapon's hospital-owning father became a valuable asset in executing their plan. The protagonist thought about Jess while being stunned by Hirapon's stun gun, and when he woke up, he found himself successfully transformed into a pig in Mestria once again. The protagonist follows a voice to find a girl being licked by a black pig. The girl is Siles, a Yesma who can communicate telepathically. The pig is Sanon, who accidentally licked Siles. The protagonist and Siles catch up, but the protagonist laments not being near Jess. Their goal is to meet Not and help save Yesma girls from cruel fates. They discover Kento is missing and must first clean up before proceeding. Sellers explains that Not didn't immediately return after killing his foe in the Forest of Needles. As they wash themselves in a stream, the group discussed the state of affairs in Mestria. The big guy that Not killed was revealed to be the King of Hell, an important figure in the underworld who was being monitored even by the royal dynasty. Not had fled from the underworld's pursuit, gathering companions who shared his hatred for the Yesma hunters and becoming a hero. However, his battles with assassins further escalated the situation, leading to the formation of the Northern Forces, which declared independence from the royal dynasty. Not formed the Liberation Army to fight for the Yesmas, leading to a three-way standoff between the three forces. Unfortunately, the Liberation Army lost the battle at the Rocklands, and Not was captured and forced into becoming an arena gladiator. The group then reminisced about their encounters with Sanon, a black pig who was a former member of the Liberation Army. Despite his death, Sanon's consciousness was able to return to Mestria, and he continued to support Not in any way possible. After bathing, Sellers and the others dried themselves in the autumn breeze while discussing their plans for the future, including living together with Sanon. Sanon reminds Mr. Lolipo that they must rescue Not and Sellers from their troubles. Mr. Lolipo faces lions in an arena as a slave, but impresses a boy named Bart with his hunting skills. Nuris, a Yesma, takes Mr. Lolipo to the ground spider castle on the order of the new king, Aragan. Aragan torments Mr. Lolipo, who remains strong. After being in the arena for a month, Not couldn't become a hero, something Aragan was determined to prevent. As they moved to another room, Not saw a torture chair. He found himself tied to it and faced with a shadowy old man who asked him how much pain he could take. Meanwhile, Not and his group were on their way to help Sellers find something important that Not had hidden. While they were talking, Sellers wondered if calling someone a shitty virgin was bad. Sanon explained that it was a kind of domination relationship that some otakus enjoyed. However, they eventually arrived at the ruins of a monastery where Not tried to figure out the actual burial spot of the important treasure. Sellers, Sanon, and the protagonist search for a marker to find something hidden. They come across a stone tile, which has a circular mark. Sellers believes it to be a spot where a collar was left behind and not burned away. They move the tile and find a white porcelain jar with the collar of a Yesma girl named Brace. It is likely that Not buried it there. The protagonist notices the collar regaining its luster, and Sellers explains that it happens when someone adored by the previous bearer comes near it. Sellers admits that she spied on Not and found out about the hidden object, which she dug up with the help of Sanon. They decide to bury the jar back under the tile. Upon returning to the inn, their request to take Sellers to Not is denied by their hostess Martha. Celes reveals her inability to leave Bapsas due to the binding contract with her house until she turns 16, making it impossible for her to travel with the group. Her room is cleaner than the guest room, and after a moment of awkward silence, she reveals a story about Not, the hero of the revolution who cared for her when she was young, causing everyone else to follow suit. Even though Celes knows it's inappropriate to fall in love as a Yesma and a child, she can't help but love him, and it pains her to stay in Bapsas, apart from him. After shedding tears, she falls asleep from exhaustion. In the grand bedchamber of the king, Evisama lay sickly and cursed. He was unsure of how to cure himself, as the curse's origin remained a mystery. His grandson, Mr. Shulavis, and Miss Wise, the king's aide, and Evisama's daughter-in-law, were present. Evisama's other son, Mr. Hortis, was suspected of casting the curse, despite having disappeared years ago. If he had found a way to unlock the Yesma collars and blood rings, the capital's citizens could have their magic powers released and disrupt the social order. Evisama's great-grandmother, Vatisama, created the Yesma race to keep the power in the hands of mages. Our protagonist is a former Yesma, now engaged to Mr. Shulavis and receiving education as the future queen. They strategize on regaining control of the northern region, and with Mr. Marcus on the inside, their victory seems assured. The royal dynasty is facing a critical situation. They suspect that the northern forces have a surreptitious sorcerer who may have the power to overthrow the monarchy. Furthermore, grandfather is unable to fight due to being cursed, and father is infiltrating Aragon's place. Calling Marcus back is risky since they don't know the true culprits that lay waste to the northern dynasty. With no clear plan in sight, the bedchamber is filled with tension. Despite the shrinking military, they refuse to seek help from those opposing the royal dynasty. Meanwhile, the protagonist can't remember her past, but she feels indebted to someone important. Faced with a sudden dizzy spell, she falls unconscious. The protagonist wakes up to the sound of a barking dog, only to find that the village is under attack. Martha tells Celes and the group to run while she stays behind with her magic-like item. Sanon mysteriously heads towards the inn, but returns unharmed. Rossi is on edge and refuses to move, leaving the group surrounded by flames with danger looming. Celes is distraught at the unfortunate turn of events. The group, consisting of a girl, a dog, and 2 pigs, desperately searched for an escape route. With the army approaching, they had to act fast. After considering their options, they decided to enter the underground passageway to avoid the flames. As they raced towards the inn, they saw a massive monster known as an org. They hid in the woods and continued towards the inn. Celes knew where the entrance to the passageway was and directed them there. They smashed through the planks blocking the entrance and fled into the darkness. Meanwhile, the protagonist was locked in a prison cell, enduring unbearable torture. Nuris, the Yesma who brought him to the castle, watched on with emotionless eyes. She offered him water in a leather mug, but demanded that he ask like a proper slave. As they talked, the protagonist revealed his desire to destroy those who harm Yesmas and their system. Nuris questioned his motives, and the conversation turned to an escaped Yesma who was beaten and near death. Nuris left the scene, leaving the protagonist feeling slightly less exhausted. The group manages to navigate through the dangerous underground passageway thanks to the 2 pigs' digging abilities. They reach the Valley of Oil, a white rock canyon named after a bloody battle that occurred during the Dark Ages. Rossi, their guide, takes them down a steep slope to the bottom. Celes explains that Rossi has some hidden equipment, including a metal dental appliance that holds small wristers that provide additional effects to his bites, such as fire, ice, and thunder. They discuss their next move, which involves heading north to Munires to meet up with the remaining members of the Liberation Army. They are cautious due to the recent attack on Bapsas, but also determined to find Not and reunite with him and the rest of their comrades. While taking a break, Sanon and the Black Pig have a comedic moment involving Celes's legs, causing her to question their interest in them. Sanon looks up at Celes and talks about indicators of a person's health. Celes asks why she cannot just look at her face, and Sanon is left speechless. Rossi sniffs Celes's legs, leaving everyone speechless. The protagonist, thinking about meeting Jess, is suddenly touched by Celes. The protagonist tells Bart about Yesmus being treated terribly in the Govan camps, and Bart agrees that the world is rotten. The torturer appears and tells the protagonist that he burned down the village he used to visit and that Celes managed to escape. The protagonist is puzzled as to why his execution involves the torturer's personal grudge against him. The old man, Bart, and the protagonist were met with a chilling announcement. They must fight to the death or be executed. The protagonist struggled with the decision, but ultimately decided to sacrifice themselves to save Bart. Later, the group arrived in a city under the control of the Royal Army. They were led to the Sleeping Foal Inn, where they reunited with Martha, who had suffered significant burns while attempting to escape the destruction of Bapsas. However, with the help of Celes and a black Rista, Martha was able to heal. Cloyd also shared the unexpected news that Not had escaped from the arena that afternoon, much to Celes's surprise. Amid rumours of the Liberation Army's favour towards the Munira's merchants, the protagonist and their comrades consult with Cloyd about Not's whereabouts. Though Cloyd is unsure of Not's location, the protagonist's deductions and Sanon's persuasions lead them to inquire further. Celes expresses her desire to join the Liberation Army once again, prompting Martha to caution her. After weighing the risks, Martha grants Celes permission to go, and although Cloyd admits to harbouring the Liberation Army in his basement, he has no knowledge of their current whereabouts. Will our heroes find the Liberation Army and Not before it's too late? Celes reluctantly accepts that she should stay put to avoid danger. However, they must figure out where the members of the Liberation Army have headed. With the help of their animal companion's sense of smell, they search the empty basement for clues. They find pieces of burnt parchment with a double circle drawn on them, which they interpret as a code to convene. After discussing the possible locations where the remnants of the Liberation Army could gather, they deduce that they most likely fled towards the east of the Forest of Needles. However, the front lines are dangerous as the Royal Army concentrates there. Celes and Martha discussed the best city to choose for their convene message. They decided to head towards Niabel and set off at sunrise. Nuris arrived to help the protagonist escape with Y's bone daggers. However, they were thwarted by the guards and forced into a cruel game where only one person could survive. The protagonist saves Bart from killing himself, but Nuris dies from her self-inflicted wound. A dragon suddenly appears, a legendary creature that breathes fire. The dragon's menacing appearance caused the cries of the crowd to turn to screams. With quick thinking, the protagonist pulled his companion close and took to the sky to evade the imminent attack. As they flew, the dragon inexplicably spewed a cloud of black smoke instead of flames, leaving the protagonist bewildered as to why the royal dynasty would send a dragon to harmlessly obstruct their escape. Despite a rough landing in the forest, the protagonist and his companion emerged unscathed, but the latter's confusion was matched only by their discovery of tears streaming down the former's face. Jess wakes up to a clear blue sky outside her window and realizes she cannot remember when she went to bed. She hears a bell ringing, and her caretaker, Miss Wise, comes rushing in. Jess learns she has been asleep for over a day and fainted from using too much fire magic. Miss Wise warns her about Esadessa, which is the magic depletion, and Jess remembers collapsing in front of Ivisama. She is determined to report to him immediately and finds him looking haggard. Ivisama talks to Jess about her sealed memories from her first Esadessa and praises her unparalleled curiosity and the power of her earnest prayer. However, he cannot reveal the contents of her sealed memories. Ivisama's crystal ball glowed red, and he summoned Mr. Shulavis to inform him of Marcus's plan to expose the North's ruling structure through Aragon's actions. Ivisama assigned Mr. Shulavis to keep tabs on Not, while Jess also asked to come along. Ivisama agreed, and they were to leave before dawn tomorrow. Jess wondered if this was related to her sealed memories, but Ivisama simply smiled in response. The strange party arrived in Niabel after a 3-day journey. The city was large, but there were not many people. They searched for clues, and the black pig and dog used their keen sense of smell to track down their target. They followed the trail to the Broken Collar, a large wood sailing ship, where they were welcomed by Itsune, the interim captain. Itsune was a tall, aggressive woman who sat with her legs open and braided hair. Litis, a Yesma girl, served water to the group. Sanon explained how they found the ship, and Itsune was surprised they had discovered their location. Itsune and Celes search for something using smell and end up in the basement of the Sleeping Foal Inn. The two are caught by Itsune's companions, including Litis, who is whisked away as soon as Itsune smells something unfamiliar. The group prepares to leave the port and set sail as soon as Not arrives, but they discover that they aren't quite ready yet. Meanwhile, Sanon learns that Litis was previously a member of the royal army and was executed, causing Itsune to rename a newly acquired companionship with her name. Despite his initial shock, Sanon comes to understand Itsune's feelings. Tsunetan's great axe packs a fierce electric shock that can take down even heavily armored orcs, followed by a guaranteed beheading on the next swing. Joshkun's crossbow arrows gain special wind protection for accurate heart piercing from hundreds of meters away. These are powered not just by magic, but also the bond between the wielder and the bones of a deceased Yesma. Celes worries about being forgotten by Not, but our hero encourages her to stick by his side and use her power of heart and prayer to assist him. Sanon arrives with a gift that cheers her up, a model of glasses that fit her perfectly and make her look amazing. Even our perverted pig friend can't resist her charm. The black pig's otaku-like laugh spilled out due to his excitement. Celes had doubts about glasses until Sanon explained how they add an intellectual image and can create a gapmo. The group was woken up by Rossi's barking, who was ecstatic to see their recently rescued friend, Not. However, his appearance left them in shock. Tattered clothes, sunken cheeks, a cut wound running from his cheek to his head, and a dangling left arm. Nostalgic feelings for the old Not gave way to their anger for what he had become. Despite his change, Not was still a skilled huntsman with a concern for Celes's safety on their journey. Litis, a Yesma, had lost her memories and was found wandering in the area. Not's mistaken judgment seemed almost fatal as his blade came close to her neck. However, her genuine Yesma collar remained intact, authenticating her identity. Not was tormented without being interrogated, and Bapsas was burnt down due to his deep ties with En the Dismemberer. The Northern Army was after him, and the group was going to embark on a dangerous journey with Not as their guide. Celes was concerned about Not's torture experience, but he assured her that it won't cause any damage. Josh handed Not a black hexagonal column, a source of magical power, and Celes used it to heal Not's injuries. Sanon explained that a Yesma's ability to heal depends on their feelings and their relationship with the person they are healing. Celes wanted to stay with Not, but he asked her to rest instead. They discussed their plans to defeat the northern forces and liberate the Yesmas, but this could potentially conflict with Jess's position in the royal dynasty. Mr. Lalipo must make a difficult choice if it comes to it. The protagonist questions his right to destroy the royal dynasty after being the one to invite Jess to join them. The black pig, sensing his hesitation, asks him a question about why the Yesma girls trust them. The pig claims it is because they are pigs, beings who are not even qualified to be at the bottom. This shocks the protagonist as he realizes that these girls shared their deepest feelings with him solely because he was lesser than they were. Later, on a ship, Celes confirms that she confided in the protagonist because he was a pig, but states that Jess had different feelings for him. She admits to being jealous of Jess and hopes that the protagonist will one day return to her. Celes also seeks advice on how to stop the pain of unrequited love for Not, a hero who only has eyes for Jess despite Celes's love for him. The protagonist comforts her and makes a philosophical statement about Not's preference for big boobs, citing Wise as an example. Suddenly, a mysterious figure in a black robe appears and silences them. The hooded figure was revealed to be none other than the king's grandson Shulavis, with his chiseled face and blonde hair. After a brief scuffle with the crew, he revealed his true intentions. Shulavis requested for the pig, along with 3 conditions to be met in exchange for meeting the elusive Jess. The first condition was to become his ally, as grandfather, the king, was cursed and bedridden, leaving the ruthless Marcus next in line for the throne. Shulavis feared that if he succeeded his father, Mestria would spiral into chaos. The powerless pig couldn't help but wonder if this was a situation he wanted to be involved in. Shulavis's father was responsible for burning down the Bapsas monastery and the northern royal castle. He seeks the pig's help in 3 conditions, one being to act as an intermediary with the Liberation Army. The pig agrees, also being tasked to pretend to meet Jess for the first time. Shulavis misunderstands the pig's relation to Jess, but the pig insists he only supports her as an Oshi. The pig's uneasiness arises from Not's situation with the Northern Army, who are still after her and may encounter the broken collar at sea. The group ponders how the northern forces were able to attack Bapsas with precision but not damage any of the surrounding cities. They consider the possibility that the Orgs used their webbing to travel by sea. Shulavis realizes that the Northern Army is never spotted by the Heckle Pond surveillance network, and surmises that the army traveled by sea to avoid detection. He rushes to warn the Liberation Army before they are surrounded and defeated. Our protagonist, the pig fairy, is asked to wait with Jess. The shy girl asks the pig how he can understand her, and mistakes him for a human who turned into a pig after eating raw liver. The pig asks about Shulavis's condition and the status of the royal dynasty, sensing that everyone is busy with the war. Jess is hesitant about confiding in the unknown pig about the internal affairs of the royal dynasty. However, the pig assures her that he knows about the royal situation. Jess admits that she has only been learning magic and has not participated in the war. She is interested in the outside world and wants to know more about her sealed memories. Suddenly, a ship explodes and strange ships approach Niabel at an incredible speed. The explosions lead to the pig, assuming the Northern Army is attacking, and Jess panicking. However, the pig assures her that they have already been warned in advance, and that the Liberation Army is prepared for counterattack. As the shelling begins, Jess and the protagonist look through a telescope to assess the situation. The enemies have not yet entered the port due to the burning ships intentionally set ablaze. With limited options, the duo searches for a safe place to hide. Jess dons a max defense robe, and they make their way towards a secret back door. There, they encounter an Org, a creature that assisted the Northern Army in their mobility. Jess uses her magic, but it is too powerful. The explosion leads to a dangerous situation, but Jess protects the protagonist. They make a narrow escape in a specially made boat and flee into the nearby pine forest. As they continued through the forest, the peaceful walk was abruptly interrupted when 3 men appeared, armed with weapons. Jess and the protagonist quickly made a run for it, narrowly avoiding arrows. Later, after successfully evading their attackers, Jess uses her magic to create a wall of fire, but things quickly go awry. Jess begins to feel unwell and suddenly faints. The Org that had been chasing them finally catches up, and the protagonist is left with little choice but to face it alone. It's a perilous situation, but they'll have to do their best to survive. The pig rushes at the approaching Org to protect Jess and draws the attention of 6 armed men. The smell of gasoline reaches him, but pigs aren't acquainted with fuel safety. A man with a gun points it at him, and a gunshot rings. The blast knocks the pig out, and he wakes up to burnt surroundings. He searches for Jess and finds her with a tall man in a dirt-coloured robe ready to take her away. A giant raptor swoops down and knocks the man out. The king of Mestria, Evis, appears with black mesh pattern covering his face and reseals Jess's memories. He leaves suddenly, and the light from an explosion in the direction of the port illuminates the forest. Evis crashes from the sky, announcing that he has annihilated the Northern Army's main force. Evis Sama is cursed, and his time is running out. He wants the brave young man to stay and support the royal dynasty and guide them in the right direction. Evis knows about the other pigs that were transferred to Mestria, and he believes the innocent girl's wish has power. The brave young man considers Evis Sama's request and thinks about Jess's wish, which still persists. He asks Eva-sama about Jess, but Eva-sama only hints about her memories. The brave young man believes that his deduction about the attack on Bapsas isn't far from the truth. Evis reveals that he sealed Jess's memories because of their hindrance to his political ambitions. However, his true motive was to develop Jess's magic power. Magic is driven by desires, so if Jess desires to recover her memories, her magic will grow. Evis entrusts the future to Jess and the summoner who brought them to Mestria. He warns the summoner about the unstable bond between the worlds, and if the pig dies, there won't be a next time. Evis bids farewell as he leaves the country in the summoner's hands. Eva-sama calls for Jess before dinner. She hurriedly cleans up after practicing magic to meet him in the grand hall. Eva-sama gives her a silver box and large gold key, warning her only the right person can use it, and failure will destroy the contents. Jess enjoys a lavish dinner with Evis-sama, Mr. Shulavis, and Miss Weiss. The night ends with no explanation for the oversized key, and Jess wonders why they held the dinner party. After the naval battle, Shulavis was missing, and everyone gathered in the king's office to discuss the matter. Marcus, Jess, Queen Weiss, and a pig were there. Marcus seemed different from what they expected. He was slim with slicked-back hair and a nervous smile, but fierce eyes. Shulavis had apparently been taken prisoner by the Liberation Army and had sent a letter to Marcus requesting an alliance in exchange for his release. Marcus planned to use the Liberation Army for their own gain and wipe out the northern forces. Later, Jess and the pig had a conversation in the bathroom, which resulted in Jess asking what Ekadessa was. Esadessa is like a mage molting, temporarily losing consciousness and magic power. Jess has experienced it 3 times, although Marcus said Shulavis underwent it 4 times. Despite awakening with stronger magic powers, there is still a large gap in experience between mages. After Esadessa, one is left defenseless and vulnerable, explaining why Marcus believes Shulavis was captured during that time. Jess confirms this, noting that she cannot remember what happened after being chased. However, their serious discussion shifts to the issue of forming an alliance with the Liberation Army. Marcus suggests enlisting the help of a friend who has influence within the army. Jess is tasked with delivering a letter to this friend, and Marcus sets the location magic on Mr. Knott for her to find him. They head to the birdhouse, where Jess introduces Marcus to the various birds, including a snowy owl that they choose to deliver the letter. Despite encountering 2 red dots on the map, they decide to aim for either one to ensure delivery. The group wants to make sure that a letter they send is not seen as fake, so the sleazy pig suggests a plan. He tells Jess to rub the letter on her thigh to show that it's genuine. After sending the letter with the owl, they continue their meeting. A boy interrupts to give them a letter from the same sender. It's a request for them to accept an alliance with the royal dynasty. Itsun and Josh refuse, but Sanan thinks it's worth considering. The Liberation Army is struggling in their fight against the northern forces, and Sanan proposes an alliance with the weakened royal dynasty. Josh suggests relying on other fighting supporters, but Sanan argues that it's their only option. Itsun questions the idea, but Knott, who trusts Sanon's advice, is willing to do whatever it takes to win. The group receives a letter from the royal dynasty, but Sanon is skeptical about its authenticity. He asks Rossi to smell the letter and confirms that it is indeed from the dynasty. The alliance is accepted, and the Liberation Army is given special treatment in the cities governed by the dynasty. Knott visits the capital alone, and Shulavis and Marcus meet with him in the Golden Sanctuary. Knott defies Marcus's order to take it easy and kneels on the ground. Jess and the protagonist meet Mr. Knott for the first time. Knott proposes a strategic alliance to the royal dynasty to defeat the northern forces. Marcus accepts the proposal and demonstrates his power to Knott. They discuss the tracking magic placed on Knott and the surreptitious sorcerer behind the northern forces. Marcus agrees to remove one of the location magic, but asks Knott to wait for the other one, as it could lead to valuable information. Knott is put forward as bait to draw out the surreptitious sorcerer, much to his excitement. Jess, desperate to uncover her past, asks Knott if they had travelled together before, but he is hesitant to answer due to his agreement with Evis. However, Nott confirms his suspicion that the Yezma who aided his escape from the north was actually the disguised king named Nuris. Wise shuts down any efforts to uncover the truth, but the pig protagonist and Jess begin to piece together the mystery. The real Nuris must still be out there. They recall meeting a Yesma named Letis who had lost her memory and believe she may be the missing link. Yesma, who the Liberation Army rescued, had no memories of her past. Marcus erased her memories to keep his true identity hidden. He didn't trust Nott and even set a location magic on the real Miss Nuris, who was also picked up by the Liberation Army. Jess is uncertain about her bookmarked person, but confides in Mr. Pig, who she feels understands her well. As they sit by the fountain, Jess admits her flaws and fears. Mr. Pig assures her that he is here to help, but only as a friend. The Crownstone Castle's name comes from its location atop a rocky mountain. Jess, Shalavis, and the protagonist arrive at the Crownstone Castle, where they plan to fight the northern forces using Nott as bait. The defenders have the advantage due to their control of the castle and its mages. Marcus stays behind in case he gets cursed like Evis, while Shalavis is ordered to remain hidden until the enemy plays their trump card. Jess and the protagonist act as intermediaries in case of an emergency. After meeting with Nott, they hand over high-quality Ristas crystals. Shalavis asks Josh for arrows and enchants them. Jess is attacked by the perverted dog, Rossi. Nott, the curious dog, had taken an interest in female legs. Jess, the human, was surprised and wondered if her face was particularly appetizing. While they pondered, an attack interrupted them. The group split up to fight and keep watch. Jess and the protagonist, known as Mr. Pig, kept an eye on Nott from a distance as enemy torches flickered in the wetland below. They retreated indoors for safety and engaged in idle conversation, but suddenly an attack hit them and Jess's robe saved them. They immediately fled and wondered what kind of weapon could do so much damage. The group debates the cause behind a recent artillery strike and realizes it must have been fueled by the extracted magic power from a Yesma's collar. They hurry through the castle, encountering Celes and her black pig along the way. After parting ways, they stumble upon a confrontation between Nott and the surreptitious sorcerer. Uncertain of being overheard, they try to flee, but the sorcerer is one step ahead, having already sensed their presence and threatens them with an ambush. In a decisive move, the protagonist runs out to confront him. The old man was terrifying with his aquiline nose, deep wrinkles, and pale skin. He had golden eyes and looked vigorous despite his age. To the protagonist's surprise, the man reveals he's the same age as Vartis. In the middle of an attack, the protagonist dodged the old man's attack, and Nott quickly reacted by throwing a flame dagger at the old man. But the old man used a long-range attack and left a wound in the protagonist's abdomen. Jess healed it, but the old man didn't die from the attack. He had regenerative powers, thanks to the fruits he had taken. They also discovered the old man was after Shulavis, not them. The Northern Army had retreated, so the group decided to withdraw and rest, leaving the Royal Army's soldiers behind. Only Jess, Shulavis, and the protagonist remained. Jess notices a bruise on Mr. Pig's stomach and shows it to Shulavis. The curse on the bruise killed Jess's grandfather and is spreading fast. Shulavis cannot cure it, and Jess is devastated. Mr. Pig suggests gouging out the bruise, but Shulavis explains it wouldn't work. Jess is upset because Mr. Pig was her first friend and always supported her. Mr. Pig reminds her that if he dies, he would go back to his original world and see his girlfriend, who has small breasts. Suddenly, the pain disappears, and Jess hugs Mr. Pig. But he realizes that Jess has taken his curse and is dying. He tries to convince her not to die, but the curse engulfs her entire body. With nothing else to do, Mr. Pig watches helplessly as Jess dies with tears in her eyes. Gazing upon the starry sky, the protagonist humbly wished for a companion to aid them on their journey. Expressing their loneliness and fear, they desperately pleaded for assistance. A miraculous response ensued, with a multitude of shooting stars illuminating the night. The next day, an eventful adventure awaited. The funeral was somber, with King Marcus staying composed throughout. Afterward, Shulavus explains the difficulties the royal couple faces with the Northern Forces' invasion and the Immortal Mage's attacks. They opt for burning the body to combat a stubborn curse, devoid of decay. Shulavus informs the protagonist of the enemy's attacks' intricacies. He can only target mages of the royal dynasty, and avoidable measures can be taken. Shulavus leads the protagonist to a sleeping girl's bedroom, mentioning her miraculous recovery thanks to a molting phenomenon. He then shows the protagonist a diary, hoping to keep his memories intact. The protagonist wakes up in the capital, able to use magic, and is welcomed as the king's grandson's fiancée. However, her memories have been sealed, and she struggles to remember what she's forgotten. She documents learning new magic spells and meeting Mr. Pig, who becomes her companion. The king informs her that her memories were sealed, but an Ekidessa spell lifted the curse. The king questions the future of her engagement and proposes erasing her memories. The protagonist is left uncertain about her fate. Shulavus suggested erasing Jess's memories of the protagonist, as it would be too heavy a burden for her. The protagonist agreed, and Shulavus promised to advise against erasing the memories. In the morning, Jess used a key to open a box that could only be unlocked by someone deeply related to her sealed memories. Inside was a light green scarf and a glass pendant with the image of a girl and a pig. Jess wore the pendant, and the seal was lifted. Jess cried and pressed her forehead against the protagonist's, expressing her pain at his departure and his pretended ignorance when they met again. The protagonist apologized and took the blame for prioritizing his own convenience over Jess's feelings. Jess reunites with Mr. Pig and shows him her magic laboratory. She demonstrates her new abilities, including moving water with just her hands and changing the color of flames. Mr. Pig is impressed and encourages her to continue studying magic. Jess expresses her gratitude towards him for allowing her to live a fulfilling life. She promises to use her own strength to find happiness and begs him to stay. However, they are interrupted by the prince's mother, Wise. Despite the awkward moment, Wise is amused and looks for Jess, who apologizes for getting caught up in her magic practice. Jess and her companion visit a sacred building to pay respects to Evis, who will be cremated the following day. Jess believes that Evis had foreseen her current situation and that he strived to keep Yesmus alive. While visiting a cemetery, Jess discovers that she had a sister named Wise, who was killed by Marcus, the man who burned down the Bapsas monastery. Jess is conflicted about her lack of memories of her family, but she doesn't harbor any anger towards Marcus. Despite the important factors that brought the royal dynasty and the Liberation Army together, there's still a potential for a fatal rupture between the two. The Liberation Army's leader's beloved died due to the king burning down the monastery, causing the fragile alliance between the army and the dynasty to crumble. Jess suggests seeking Marcus's younger brother Hortus, who disappeared from the capital years ago. However, there is no news of his whereabouts, and he may be dead or in hiding. Celes notes a coincidence between Not, a mage, and Shulavus, and suggests finding Hortus through a perverted dog named Rossi. With newfound confidence, Jess and the protagonist set their sights on their next move.